Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's UCLA Alumni Town Hall, Name, Image, and Likeness, and its Impact on Student Athletes, hosted by UCLA Alumni Board of Directors, Matt Saucedo. My name is Joseph Blancas, and I serve as an Associate Director at the UCLA Alumni Association. The UCLA Alumni Town Hall series is a gathering place where Bruins can have their voices heard, ask essential questions, and receive transparency and expertise. In today's program, you will learn more about the NIL movement from UCLA student athlete and two-time National NIL Male Athlete of the Year, Chase Griffin, and how he is leveraging NIL across multiple activations, platforms, and campaigns. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It's with your help that we are able to strengthen the Bruin community with programs like this. For some general webinar housekeeping, we'll have time at the end of our program for a Q&A with Chase. So please email your questions to the email provided in the chat, and we will be recording the event and we'll share it out once it is made available. Now, to start our program, I'm excited to introduce our moderator for today, Matt Saucedo. Matt is the head of core production adoption at Meta. Matt earned an MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business and a bachelor's in communications from UCLA. Hi, Matt. Thank you for being here. I'm also excited to introduce Chase Griffin, who is a football quarterback with our football team, as well as a lifelong Bruin. Chase, welcome here. Thank you for being here, both of you. And we're excited to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joseph. Really appreciate the introductions. Chase, thank you for joining us today. Really looking forward to our chat. I know we've got a lot of great folks on the call and some folks watching us on social, so should be good. And just a quick shout out, like Joseph was saying, if you've got questions that come up, definitely email Joseph. His email is jblancas@support.ucla.edu. And we'll get those questions over to me, and then we'll kind of mix them into the chat that we're having today. So we're talking about name, image, and likeness, a really pivotal policy that came into effect in 2021 for student athletes around the United States. Chase, we're incredibly grateful for you to take some time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure, to talk to us today. Before we get into the NIL conversation, why don't we kind of start big picture, and why don't you walk us through a little bit about your time at UCLA and kind of the journey that's gotten you to where you are today?
Absolutely. I think you heard Joseph say I'm a lifelong Bruin. I was actually born in UCLA, Santa Monica, right down Wilshire. So to be here and about to graduate in the spring with my second degree as a Bruin is a real full circle movement. I grew up the child of a teacher and someone who had big aspirations for their children. And I think that combination led to me growing up in a way where I felt nurtured and I felt empowered to chase my dreams. And I remember at 8 years old, I told my father that I wanted to win a Super Bowl. And from that point on, whether it be football, whether it be violin, whether it be soccer, whether it be school, I always trained and performed that in a way where I wanted to win whatever the Super Bowl of that was. And when I chose a college, choosing a school like UCLA felt like another one of those moments. Growing up, I had a lot of pride in being able to make social progress as an athlete and as a Black athlete. And I think there is no college institution in the nation that has the history that we have at UCLA, where you have athletes like Jackie Robinson, you have athletes like Arthur Ashe, you have athletes like Ann Myers Drysdale. These are people who've changed the world through their sport and their performance, both, in the field of play and outside, just in daily life. And to be able to go to a school like UCLA and now earn my second degree, and then in the fall start my completion on my third degree at the Master's in Legal Studies program is a huge blessing.
That's incredible. Yeah, the legacy that you spoke to of athletes and Black athletes at UCLA just doing amazing things, both on the field, on the court, and off. As somebody who's very involved in, obviously, a lot of alumni efforts across campus, that's something that continues to motivate me to stay. So that's awesome to see that that's kind of part of of, the story behind kind of your passion for UCLA. That's really, really cool. So why don't we move into the NIL conversation a little bit? So for folks on the call, NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And like I mentioned, this was a policy that was passed, I think, June of 2021, that basically permitted student athletes to be able to earn compensation based on their name, image, and likeness across every collegiate division. So hugely impactful change to the way in which I think student athletes look at the collegiate experience. And so would love to hear, just curious from your perspective, Chase, how has that impacted your experience as a student athlete during your time at UCLA?
Well, before I answer anything about NIL, I just want to acknowledge Ed O'Bannon and him really spearheading the fight for the empowerment and equity movement that is NIL. So shout out Ed O'Bannon, another great champion in that long line of Bruins, who was, best player in the nation that year and a national champion. So salute to Ed O'Bannon. I think my NIL journey is a little bit different than some of the athletes who are getting to UCLA and every college in America now. When I first got to UCLA, of course, I knew about the Ed O'Bannon case, but it was still something where people were like, oh, it's not going to happen while you're still in college, sort of like how revenue share is now. But when it came into play, I had already been doing the things that sort of help in that space, where when I came out of high school, I had a lot of good options as far as schools with immense networks. Some of my favorite offers coming out of high school were Ivy League schools. And I felt that my choice in choosing UCLA was choosing somewhere where the sports were bigger, but somewhere where I didn't feel like I was missing out on building a network at a Harvard or at a Yale or at a Dartmouth. And I felt like as soon as I got to UCLA, I wanted to maximize my network. So I went to school in a way where I carried on my habits from high school, where if I had classmates that were doing things, I wanted to learn about them. I always did my best and try to get 4.0 every quarter. And I also got into all the clubs that you're supposed to do, whether it was the Student Athletic Council here, the BAC, or representing UCLA on the Student Athletic Leadership Team to the Pac-12 Council. And through those initiatives, I learned a lot, not only about campus and the dealings as far as conference and the NCAA go, but I created and carried on my habits from high school of that networking. Not to mention, I've sort of been attractive to brands for a long time, whether it be middle school or high school. In Texas, where I was the Gatorade Player of the Year, I was the Ford Tough Player of the Year. I won branded awards with In-N-Out and Whataburger. I had experience doing events, doing speaking engagements for brands. It's just at that time, it wasn't commercial because I wasn't being paid yet. So I had a history of building out a sort of reputation that brands wanted to align themselves with. And when NIL came into play, because I had built this reputation and had done a good job marketing it, just because I was thinking about the next 40 years, I wasn't even thinking about my time at UCLA. I was thinking of how do I use UCLA as a launch pad for life. Those habits and what I was building then transferred perfectly into the age of NIL. So as soon as NIL started, I had a great LinkedIn, I had good social following, and I was authentic to what I portrayed on those channels. And when brands were looking for people where at the start they might have been tentative to align themselves with the brand of an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I think mine felt like not only a safe choice, but a tried and true choice. And I think to this day, I've been able to deliver on that.
So could you, I want to hear more about kind of how, I want to touch more about how NIL has impacted kind of your UCLA career. But before we get to that, I'm kind of curious, you touched on, this idea of kind of developing your reputation and your brand at an early age. Could you share a little bit about what some of those kind of pillars of your brand look like, and kind of how you went about crafting, what felt like an authentic brand to you? I mean, especially like you said, at 18, 19, getting a lot of these, branded awards. What was that process like?
I think everyone's self-branding is different. For my process, I think I was blessed to be born and raised into really good values. First off, for me was always my faith and my Christianity that kept me centered and kept perspective of everything for me. I think when I thought about branding, it was less about, okay, how do I need to act to get brands, but more, how do I quantify exactly what I'm about on a daily basis? That way it's easy to say in 30 seconds. And so I came up with my Believe brand, which sort of serves as a medium between my individual self and the services that I provide to my clients, which are brands most of the time. And I created a value system, a values playbook that I abide by and that I recommend for anyone who's looking to get into the NIL space. And it comes down to 3 sets of values. Number one for me are my personal values. I consider myself a believer, a winner, and a provider. I think over the course of my young life, of my time at UCLA, I've demonstrated all 3 of these abilities on numerous occasions. As far as step 2 of my, values playbook is economic value. When I go into a deal, I look for brands that match my personal values, but are also able to budget out a production cost or budget out a payment that works well with my market value. And I learned how to say no, not just because of the personal side, but also because of the economic side. There are some great brands where I would be cheating myself if I didn't go with my market value into a deal as far as asking price. And then third is empowerment and community value. How can I use the economic value that I generated through my deal to better others? So same way I'll take a piece of my, payment from a brand and put that into production. Afterwards, I'll take a piece of my branded deal and donate that to a cause, some type of philanthropy. When I look at the grand scheme of things, I want to build generational wealth early and contribute to public service and philanthropy, and do all of that while maintaining my faith. And the fact that I'm able to practice that at a young age is a huge blessing for me. And I believe that as long as I stay true to myself, as I grow in my network and my wealth, then I'll be able to help pass that along to others.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm kind of curious, how do you think about balancing all of the workload of NIL related activities, with being a student and of course everything else going on in life? How do you think through all that?
I think when you look at the corporate world, you look at the C-suite, and a lot of those folks played sports, whether it be growing up in high school or in college. And part of what sports, especially at a Division I university, it teaches you time management. It's impossible to even survive the athletic side or the academic side if you aren't somewhat adequate at your time management. And I think the best players and best students and those who are the best at both are excellent in their time management. And I consider myself excellent. I think between a combination of taking my priorities extremely seriously and cutting out the fat out of my life, but at the same time, really enjoying the things that I do. When I look at content creation, I always tell people it's important to be authentic, because that's how you're going to be able to do it every day. It can't look like you're manufacturing anything. And so when it comes to time management, I think I do very well. And to be in grad school also helps a lot. I only take 2 classes every quarter. That's probably about to change in the fall. I'm not sure about my class load yet. But it gives me a lot of time to focus on NIL stuff. And then when I am in season, like, don't get it twisted, football is still my number 1 priority. So it's like I said earlier, the priority in keeping my priorities straight is what keeps me on track. And I understand that there's certain things that I have to focus on more in order to make sure that everything else is still on the table.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. Time management's a great skill, I think, not just for student athletes to have, but for pretty much anybody in this day and age. So that's a good shout out to time management. So we got our first question from the audience. This one comes from somebody that actually teaches an NIL class at a Big Ten university, and I guess one of their part of their curriculum is having the students watch, I guess there's a Bloomberg short documentary on your activities in NIL. I think very similar to kind of what we're talking about today, right? Just kind of how it's impacted your career and your student athlete experience and all that. So I haven't seen it myself, but that based on what I was able to get in the couple seconds here, it seems like what it's about. So since this documentary has come out and since NIL has launched, how has the NIL world changed from the brand perspective? So I guess from 2021 to today, do you find that brands are more knowledgeable about NIL? And do you feel like where's that going, I guess?
I think the brand space is a very complicated space. I think the brands that went about NIL well, especially early, are seeing return on investment, but are also coming together to find out ways to build more. As far as the branded content space, NIL is already $1 billion valued market. And I think by 2025, it's supposed to be a $4 billion market. And I think the majority of that 4 billion will be branded content on its way to revenue share. But in the meantime, there's a combination between the talent side, which is the college athletes, increasing our prowess in education about how to do money deals in general, but also how to deliver on content. And what I mean by that is innovators in any young space are going to excel just because they're going to deliver better product at a more rapid rate. I think that's sort of been a key to my success, where if you look throughout my NIL journey, my content got better over time. And I sort of found a formula that minimized the time needed for production, but also increased the quality of the finished product that left, the brands that I work with more satisfied, and they did better as far as engagement rates on social media. I think taking that same approach for the average athlete, as well as athletes who haven't really been involved or felt inspired for the NIL market to, because of new gain knowledge and new shared knowledge, be able to join and grow the talent pool, you'll see a higher brand investment. On the other side, media is extremely important in depicting the NIL world. I'm sure we'll talk about collectives, but collectives do dominate the media market just because a lot of these deals have extremely high dollar amounts that look really good in press lines, and there's a little bit more scandal in those.
Real quick, just for context for folks in the audience, can you give kind of a quick summary of what you mean when you talk about collectives?
So a collective is an independent party that semi-works in conjunction with a school, mainly spearheaded by one or two powerful donors, hopefully one or two in the audience right now. And they pull together money either for teams or players. And I think they're real power players as far as the recruitment side, but also for just building out program reputation. And in general, I'm definitely pro collective. Anything that puts athletes in a position where they can earn money, I'm for it, as long as we do it safely, not only for the sake of the student athlete and the donor relationship, but also for the school reputation.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So one more question on kind of the brand dynamics and where that's gone. I mean, have you seen a shift to more national brands over the last year? Or what what kind of brands seem to resonate most in the NIL space? Or which ones do you feel like you've just, had success with so far? Not individual brands, but more like, what's the zeitgeist look like? What's the trend?
I think going back to what I said earlier about innovators, those with the best content, I think are going to get the best deals. That's how you sometimes see athletes from non-revenue generating sports get some of the best deals. If they have extremely large followings and their content's always good, the best brands are going to want them because they're going to generate the best return on investment. I also think that it's important for the industry to understand that college athletes are an extreme niche in this market. And when you look at advertising in general, it's all shifting, if not already shifted over to influencer marketing. And some of the best influencers are athletes. And it sort of goes back to when you think about UCLA's history. Some of the greatest alumni to ever be in Westwood are athletes, and the stories and connection that athletes build with not only the fan bases of universities, but just the general population of the country and the world is really unmatched by any other large industry. And to be able to tap into that, I think brands that are doing it the right way are seeing return on investment.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that makes a ton of sense. So what do you think, you talked about it being at least $1 billion industry, before I think it had even officially became an industry. But at the same time, there's quite a lot of athletes, student athletes in the space competing for those dollars. What do you think? You touched a little bit on, your ability to generate the content, faster, better, right? A couple of these different components. But what do you think helped you kind of carve out your niche in the space, given just how much competition there is from other student athletes?
I think it was a mix of my production skills, mix of my ability to be on camera and speak well to my story, a mix of me being authentic, and a mix of me having a story and reputation that matches some of the best brands in the country. And when you look at partnerships that I've created, I think one that really makes a lot of sense is JP Morgan Chase, where not only do we share the same name, but we share a lot of the same values. And when I go into deals or when I'm approached by a company, that really is the bar. I'm looking for number one brands because I carry myself as someone who is someone with large aspirations, someone that tries to do everything on the excellent level, no matter what it is. And I think for athletes who understand the value that they possess, which NIL is an opportunity to demonstrate that value, then they'll understand that they don't have to concede themselves into any deal that approaches them. I think the athletes that have a sense of self, where they're able to tell their story and understand how to package it to an audience, and just in the same way they're able to do it on social media, but do it in the brand space, are finding talents that, who knows, maybe The Rock had that at the U, or there's athletes who are going to be stars someday, or that are already stars on their campuses. And I think NIL gives athletes the opportunity to practice that value while they're still in college.
Yeah, which can be hugely impactful for the university, for the brand, for the student athlete. So I totally hear you on that. One question from the audience that we got was, could you walk us through your first deal? What did that look like? What was how did it feel? Just kind of tell us that story if you're open to it.
Absolutely. So my first deal was with Degree in their Breaking Limits campaign. And honestly, before the law went into effect, I think it was July 1st of 2021, I didn't know what was going to happen. I'd had some brand experience. I'd known some people in the space, but I don't think anyone knew whether it was the previous year's Heisman winner or the kid at a D3, I don't think anyone knew how NIL was going to go for them. And the degree deal happened in a way that might have happened if NIL wasn't around and I was just graduating. And what I mean by that is LinkedIn was integral in that, where I had been authentically portraying myself on LinkedIn, and the right people saw my story. The head of marketing for Unilever, who degree is one of their people in one of their companies in their family of companies, reached out to me, and he told me that he thinks I would be a very good candidate for the Breaking Limits team just because of my story of overcoming obstacles to get to where I'm at now at UCLA. And I submitted my name for that, and I was selected. And I think that campaign went on to generate 1 billion hits. So not only was it my first brand deal, it was probably the largest scale brand deal from a large brand at that point. But it also created great return on investment. It sort of set the precedent, not only for degree, but it set a precedent for what I expected going into brand deals. And it validated a lot of my personal values because I was able to actually act on that during that first deal.
Yeah, that's a great brand and a great company to kick things off with. So nicely done. Another question from the audience. We're getting some good ones coming in, so thank you to everybody for sharing these with us. What are your thoughts on how this policy might affect the high school recruitment process, right? Because now, I think where you went to before the policy was enacted, where you went to university would impact kind of your potential chances of going pro. Now it's kind of shifted, like, well, you can start earning real returns now. And so now you've got high schoolers that are starting to think about how NIL is going to impact them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think any aspect of a university that they have to work on and tailor themselves to be more attractive to people choosing a university, whether it be students or student athletes, is good. Not only does it increase quality of life and quality of education at a university, but it also enhances the experience of the athletes when they're choosing a school. And I'm always for competition. I think this question sort of tailors towards the collective side. Not, of course, on the branded side, choosing a university, if you're in a good market, that's awesome. But I'd also argue that some of the smaller markets are more advantageous to the average athlete because they have more brands around that are dedicated solely to the school. In a city like LA, I'm competing on deals with Matt Stafford and Herbert. So, those are the other quarterbacks in LA. As far as the collective side, let's take UCLA, for example. I'm all for team-wide deals. I think it's important to remember in the NIL space that most athletes have made zero. And that's not just talking about the 500,000 athletes nationwide and all levels, but I'd say there's a lot of athletes at UCLA who haven't done any cash deals yet. And just the ability to participate in a team-wide deal would be awesome for all the athletes on the team, but also would be attractive towards recruits. And then I'd also say, as far as the collective side, it's important to choose certain sports that have a track record of winning, that often at other schools don't receive any collective assistance. You have schools, you have teams here like softball, like women's basketball, like women's soccer that are winning or competing for national championships every year. And if they had a collective to back them, look out, UCLA would add on to almost an unfair run in women's athletics when you look at it in the grand scheme. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes as far as the branded side. There will be an increase on that. And I think there'll be an increase on the collective side. But the schools that are able in the recruitment game to create a safe and well-guarded system as far as the collectives that benefit not only the players that are on the team currently, but in the recruitment space are going to reap the blessings of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. So yeah, and in terms of numbers, I think it's somewhere around like half or over 350 student athletes at UCLA have benefited from NIL, but obviously not every student athlete. Hopefully those numbers do go up in the long run as we just continue to learn more about how the policy, how to benefit from this new industry. But could you talk a little bit about what's involved in the various activations in terms of, the types of content that you create, on which platforms, and just kind of how you think through that production process?
I think one of the greatest gifts of NIL has been my experience on the production side. Of course, being on camera is awesome. I have fun with it. But having a skill set to be on camera, but also off, widens the amount of opportunities you're able to take on and that you're able to do. And getting better at the production side, especially pre-production, made being in front of the camera a lot easier, just because I knew exactly what shots I needed to get. And it took a 3 or 4 hour shoot down to an hour, which, with time management, again, is so important. Early on, I was, pretty simple in my content creation process. I think I'm still simple now, but I learned where maybe I would have just had someone recording on a phone. I had a script in mind and I would just do it in front of a nice background. I think over time, I wanted to make sure my audio was better. I wanted to make sure my picture was better. And so with larger deals, with larger dollar amounts, I was able to reinvest out of that deal into hiring photographers, hiring videographers, putting more time into shot lists, into location choices. And through trial and error, I found the right people, I found the right approaches, and I found the right templates that did well with my followership base. I think that's another key piece that it's important for creators to remember. Sometimes your followers might just respond very well to a typical story post or a selfie with your phone. For me, I found that having very well produced content not only delivered to the brands what they wanted to see, where on every single campaign, I wanted to have the best video in that campaign, but also to my followers, it was something that felt authentic and trademarked to me.
Yeah, that I could see the production part. You got a custom background, you've got the ring light going. It's sharp, man. It's looking good. So I think it goes a long way. It goes a really long way. So somebody, another question from the audience, you talked about kind of your personal values around, empowerment and driving value and to the brands that you're working with. And we've talked about the benefits of production value in driving a lot of those values home. What are some other ways in which you think about, crafting the scripts or the narratives around the content that just make sure that you're continuing to align with the ethos of your brand as you're telling the story of the other, of the client brand?
I think the easiest person to talk about is always yourself. And a way to do that in a way that also is important to the brand is to find brands that align with your values. When I talk about JP Morgan Chase and how with that partnership, I want to help empower other people of all walks of life in their money habits and money journeys and practicing good financial habits to create generational wealth. That's not only a mission of JP Morgan Chase, that's a mission of my life that I live every single day. The importance of being able to pass that on to my family was displayed in a campaign that I did with them, where I literally had my family practicing good money habits and you know, opening their Chase college checking account and their first banking account. And to be able to do deals in a way where honestly I would have been doing this stuff anyways, I just decided to put it in the camera and do it in a theatrical way, not only makes it easy and natural for me to do, but it also rings true to the core level to my followership and to the brand that I work with. And if someone feels compelled and someone actually believes what's happening in advertisement, that's when it works. People don't want to buy from companies or brands, they want to buy from people. And I think that's what the best talent and best producers understand in the advertisement space.
Yeah, authenticity goes a long way in social content, both paid and unpaid today. So I totally hear you on that. I think that's something even in our own social content that somebody like me creates is something to keep in mind. So I totally hear you on that and see how it really benefits the partners that you work with. I do want to take a quick step back. One of the questions from the audience was that you know, we're getting into a lot of the details of the NIL policy and how it's impacted your career, and this is fantastic. Yeah, but we've got a wide range of folks in the audience. We've got some people who are teaching classes on NIL, and I think some people who are looking at it as something that maybe as high schoolers they might want to think about when they get to college. So let's just to make sure everybody's on the same page. You know, could you walk us through kind of the basics of what an NIL deal looks like? So when we're talking about content, right? We're talking about social media content and different aspects of that, but can you walk us through the basics of, you know, okay, so, you know, you're engaged by a brand, you're asked to produce content. Can you walk us through what sort of content you create? You know, who's providing the direction for that content? And then kind of, you know, you've talked about campaigns, right? And so what does that campaign look like? So if you could just give us the, like, you know, explain it like we're 5 years old, you know, description of that process, I think that'll be helpful in making sure everybody's on the same page here.
Absolutely. Start to finish on a deal, when you look at the NIL landscape, a lot of the deal flow goes direct to the athletes, but I think the larger brand deals go through marketplaces a lot of the time. And so there's marketplaces like Opendorse, where athletes will have accounts on Opendorse and will be pinged by Opendorse that there's a brand deal that is awaiting their approval. And the athlete can click on the brand deal, they'll see the dollar amount, they'll see when the brand needs it by, who the brand is, and they'll see the deliverables. And in the deliverables, this is what the athlete has to provide in their service to the brand in order to capitalize on the cash or whatever the payment is. So in the deliverables, it'll have the amount of posts needed, the platforms that the post needs to be posted to, and the parameters of the post. So say for degree, they paid me X amount of money to do, I think it was a while ago, it was either 1 or 2 in-feed posts and then some story posts. And so I had to be okay with posting that many times for degree. They provided captions that they want attached to their posts, as well as sort of a guideline for the videos and or photos that were needed for that campaign. And then there was also a date attached to it where I had to submit these back to Opendorse and Degree for them to approve before I posted it on my channels. And I think groups like Opendorse are great because they make that line of communication very easy, and they also do it in a way where they're on both party sides. So they want the deal to happen in a way where if the athlete might have been slacking on 1 or 2 of the deliverables, they'll be able to get to the athlete before the brand is displeased with the athlete. And after everything is posted and all the taglines are exactly what the brand works, you mark done, and then you receive your payment through the marketplace. That's how the typical brand deal goes.
That, as a 5-year-old, I understood that completely. So thank you for walking us through that.
Sure.
No, that's great. And it's kind of a quick follow-up to that. This was another question that had come in earlier from the audience. In terms of inbound and deal flow, is most of that coming from, for example, like the UCLA NIL Collective, from Opendorse, from yourself, like brands reaching out directly? And I know you're, a sample size of one, and so I'm sure that there's benefits to all these different ways, but kind of given where you're at in your career, where does most of this deal flow come in from?
I think for each athlete, it's different. Same for each team. Me personally, I haven't done any deals or had any real communication with any collectives on campus. I'm of course open to hearing any deals. It just hasn't really been my medium of receiving deals. At the point that I'm at now, I'm pretty passive as far as deal flow goes. I don't reach out a lot to brands unless I have deep conviction for a certain brand, but I haven't done that in a while. I'm blessed to be, sort of in a position where if brands want to work with me, I'll set a meeting just like this. And if I enjoy what they have to say and they sort of meet my values, not only personally, but also economically, then I can talk more with them. If not, I feel, no hard feelings about, passing or saying maybe not at this time. Most of my deals are branded. And then I also have some partnership deals, like my deal at Uniworld Group, which is the largest multicultural ad agency, where I help consult with them and provide advice and honestly engagement for their programs. So Uniworld has a program called the NIL Enrichment Program, where we're increasing brand buy-in into the college athlete NIL space, and at the same time utilizing media to help stoke the fire of conversation for the branded deal side and tell the stories of athletes, where in college sports media and history, our stories haven't been told in a way that is authentic and true to how we see it. So I think on initiatives like that, it's a little bit more involved, a little bit more long-term, to where I feel like I have stake in the programs that they're doing. But for the most part, it is branded content where they'll have me in exclusivity clause, which means I can't do deals with brands of the same category. So when I did a deal with Degree, I couldn't do a deal with Dove a week later. For the most part, that is the branded deal space.
That makes sense. Appreciate all the context. This has been really, really helpful in helping understand not just, the process in which an NIL deal works, but also, how it looks industry wide. So thank you for being so open on this. Taking a step back from the NIL stuff, specifically, you're on track to complete a graduate program at the UCLA School of Education this year, and then you've got your UCLA Law Master of Legal Study coming up next. What's the next year or two looking like for you? In terms of what are you hoping to accomplish?
So I still have 2 more years of eligibility as far as football goes. So on the academic side, I'd look to continue to maximize my scholarship and earn all the degrees that they'll let me get. As far as the football side, I think the goal is to win every game every year. That's sort of how I was raised. That's sort of how I see the sport of football and all sports since I've been, 5 years old playing soccer. So football still takes up definitely the majority of my working time. And we're about to wrap up a really good off season, and then we'll have 2 weeks off and then go right into spring ball. So that's what's next for me in the immediate sense. And then we have this season this fall. And then after that, we'll go from there.
That's awesome. And then post UCLA, where do you see yourself, headed? Do you have any ideas or plans on kind of what you want to accomplish there?
I think continuing on the banking front as well as the media front, both production and talent. I'm really grateful for NIL because I've been able to create not only relationships, but working relationships with demonstrated success with reputable brands that I would work for. And those relationships where I have a track record of already delivering on value for those brands is going to provide me opportunities in the near future. And I think if I keep on capitalizing each and every year the way that I have thus far, I'll be happy where I'm at.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the time. I think I got through all the questions from the audience. I hit up all the ones that I had prepped for coming into this. So thank you for being so open and transparent about the process. It's been helpful. I've appreciated learning so much about it. I'm sure the audience has as well. So oh, here's Joseph now. All right. So thank you, Chase. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for moderating this insightful conversation. And Chase, we appreciate you being here. You're doing great things. We had a attendee who said they enjoy your music. So
that's awesome. Stay tuned. There's more coming soon.
Great. So again, thank you both for being here. To those who tuned in, hope you have a good rest of your night and a wonderful rest of your week. And as we like to say, go Bruins.
Go Bruins. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.